Welcome to the Reiki Healing Summit 2022. In this free online event, some of the world's leading Reiki ambassadors and energy healing pioneers invite you to deepen the gift of peace in your life and out into the world. Whenever the storms of life surround us, we can look deep into our hearts. Peace is right here for us to feel, nurture, and share with the rest of the world. Rather than be caught up in the waves, together, we can allow ourselves to dwell in the ocean of our being. When we radiate peace from our open hearts, the healing energies expand and blossom into purpose, love, prosperity, and bliss. Reiki can change our world into a peaceful one, but it's up to us to lead the way. Share this inspiring event brought to you by Reiki Rays with your friends and family, and join us at reikirays.com/summit 2022. And now, meet your summit host, Yolanda Williams.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reiki Rays Healing Summit. I am here today with Sheena Yuan, and we will be talking today about using Reiki to guide you to your life purpose. And I want to thank you before we begin, Sheena, for joining us for this conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's exciting hearing all these beautiful teachings from everyone in the event. Actually, before we get started, I want to make sure everyone is familiar with you and your work. So just a little background, Sheena is a Reiki master, Toronto-based entrepreneur, and the founder of Raw Redemption and co-founder of Roots Movement Retreats, a self-care retreat for those ready to immerse themselves in self-healing. Sheena offers corporate Reiki, meditation, and mindfulness packages, speaking partnerships, art workshops, and most of all, deep root work for those who are ready to take their healing into their own hands. In 2019, Sheena was guided by her ancestors to open OnePeopleTO, Toronto's decolonizing wellness and spiritual sanctuary, to address the economic and racial disparities in wellness and non-denominational spirituality. More recently, in 2020, after completing a post-integration training with Fluent Psychedelic Training, Sheena began guiding psychedelic ceremonies and working with other organizations to bring an intersectional lens to psychedelic medicine retreats. You have been quite busy. Yeah. So thank you so much. Again, looking forward to our conversation, love. So first of all, Sheena, with all that you've had in your background, it sounds like your practice keeps expanding, educating yourself for the benefit of others keeps expanding. But can you tell us a bit about your introduction to Reiki, how this came on your path?
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me here. I always think back to my first Reiki session and the energy and who I was at that time. And it's so very clear to me. January 15th, 2008, 6:30 p.m. I say I don't know why, but I know why, because it was such a profound experience for me. I was really just going through a really hard time, to be honest. I was in corporate, in a sales environment, in a male-dominated sales environment. So I actually worked in a power tool company. And was a coordinator and really helping to support, the sales folks and account managers and all of that sort of thing. And in that job, knowing that I wasn't doing the thing that I was supposed to do, but just really at the time, like hanging on, and doing all the things that the traditional medical model tells us to do. So, really relying on my doctors and therapists. I was taking medication at the time as well, at the max dose of antidepressants, actually. And, for anyone that has taken antidepressants, it's really dependent on your body chemistry and the nuances of what it is that you're experiencing physiologically, and being able to make the appropriate kind of combination with the medication. And so after probably like the 5th or 6th medication and weaning up and down and really feeling frustrated with myself, but also with, this medical model that's saying like, I'm doing all of the things. So why am I not feeling the way I feel like I should be feeling? And it's funny because when I talk about it and I share with folks, I used to feel bad about saying like it was really out of desperation, but it was. And I went, in this job between 4 and 5, I would be in the receptionist role. I was working in a mailroom. So this is like 12 years ago. And so 2008, and, really just wanting to be able to find some kind of relief. And at the time, just maybe a couple of years before, The Secret had come out. And through The Secret, I was introduced to Louise Hay. Louise Hay is just one of my, will always be one of my teachers, God rest her soul. And it was through her book, You Can Heal Your Life, that came to me in a weird and magical way. I ended up watching The Secret, and maybe a couple of weeks later was visiting my parents and was going through my mom's bookshelf, and she had a first edition of You Can Heal Your Life, and it was clean, crisp, like she hadn't cracked it. And at the back of the book, if anyone's familiar, there are a list of, modalities. And at the time I had wanted to do acupuncture, but at the time I was too afraid of the whole needle situation. And I love acupuncture now, right? But Reiki seemed the most similar to acupuncture. And I felt like I really wanted something that was going below the surface, because I felt like there was more I needed to get at. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like the medication and the talk therapy wasn't accessing something. And so God, whatever, the universe, spirit guided me to Reiki. And that evening I had a profound experience. I remember being on the table and I laughed and I cried and I tried to sit up. And I just remember I felt like all of these things were coming out of me. And I remember feeling embarrassed on the table, but also so relieved. And I went home, I drove home that night, and it was probably like a 15-minute drive, and all of the lights were green. Like I didn't have to stop once. And I remember thinking like, this is so weird. And for me, because the cloud and the fog that I was in, to be able to like feel that, even as I talk about it, I get like chills. And it was just the smallest thing, like, oh, I didn't even have to stop. And that kind of made me think like, ooh, things feel clearer. I feel better. And funny enough, I think like a lot of things, maybe sometimes like we get a massage and you're like, oh, I'm good. So I didn't go back for a year. And then just fast forward, my sister ended up going to a bookstore that was opening, and there was someone in the self-help section doing Reiki, like mini Reiki sessions. And so she ended up, giving me her card and kind of saying like, oh, you did this random thing, last year, I remember you talking about it. There was this woman doing this thing. Here's her card. And it turns out that person, the person that I had gone to the year before, was this person's teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. And I ended up going to this woman, a woman of color. And it's not even to say that it matters, but I think there was a level of comfort for me, to be able to open up things, because there are things that I had been carrying, that I didn't feel comfortable to talk about. Yes. Never mind with family or with people that didn't necessarily like look like me, to be able to receive the heaviness of what I had gone through. And so really between 2009 and 2012, I went regularly, sometimes weekly, depending on my finances, sometimes monthly. And it was in 2012 that I decided to do my level 1 and level 2, because the profound experience and the transformation that I had, it was so noticeable, to myself, but to other people. And that's originally how I came across Reiki.
Wow. So it's interesting because you had like this 4-year window before actually getting attuned or taking classes, but definitely having the benefit of being introduced to it. But I have to ask you, from that initial session that you had, even though you hadn't gone back in a year, and I have to just kind of side note too, you bring up such a good point of, I think a lot of us think, oh, I had a session, now I feel good and I can carry on. And we don't think to go back often until we feel misaligned or we feel something is hard again, not really recognizing the benefit of the consistency. No matter what you feel, stay consistent, right? But in that year window, did you ever think about it again? What was your thought after that experience?
Definitely there was so much, I think, happening and clearing up in that time. I can definitely share that. So that was January. By November, I was off medication.
Wow.
And not really because of my own, I guess, instinct to say, like, I wanted to be able to manage my emotions or learn how to manage my emotions. And I think it was Reiki that really taught me, like, I can do this. I don't have to be beholden to the ways in which I think myself to be, oh, I have this experience or this condition and it's always going to be this way. And I just have to deal with it in the way that I am, managing it, rather than actually sitting with myself, processing, being able to, use the energy that's coming through. And to be able to move myself forward, right? There were definitely times throughout the year where I was like, oh, that experience was so great, I should go back, but so many things. Oh, I should go and get my nails done. Oh, I should do this. But there was definitely a visceral clearing for me that happened. But again, I think, particularly at that time, for someone like myself that financially I think particularly too, for a lot of folks, sometimes you have to end up choosing between wellness appointments or, and I mean, especially now with inflation, taking care of like your everyday, but your everyday is your wellness, right? And at the time I was like, I have to just focus on the practical, not really thinking that the practical is my wellness.
Right.
And then so it was within the year that I started to see this new practitioner and really started to feel the consistency, the benefits of the consistency, right? Yeah. And I really just got addicted to feeling the peace.
Yes. Isn't that something? I always tell people, I remember the first time I realized I was in a peaceful state, I thought, oh my God, is something wrong with me? Because I was not used to it. Yes. And then once I got used to it, honey, I was like, listen, if it's disrupting my peace, no, thank you. Yeah, I completely understand that. So one of the things I'm very curious to know too, once it became more consistent for you, aside from the peacefulness, what was it that Reiki started to help you realize, or what did your relationship to your practice start to become?
Oh, that everything that I was doing wasn't serving, not to say everything, but a lot of the things I was doing wasn't serving me. And it really helped to open me up to my confidence, because at the time, particularly with folks that are going through a challenging time, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever the situation is, it can really take a toll on your confidence, and how you're able to show up, just whether it's to work or relationships, all of that. And I'm downtown Toronto, so it's funny that is coming through. And so it was really an ability for me to, it's kind of like you were saying, to slow down, but it wasn't until I had those opportunities to do that, to really take time for myself, in a way that I wasn't allowing, because ultimately it comes back to me, right? That really made me aware of the profoundness of my gifts, and my gifts just being like me. That's the first gift. And then also being able to step into more of myself. Reiki has given me a gift of expansion, and that expansion never stops. And it's only up to me to say like, oh, that's enough. But Reiki has really given me this gift of allowing myself to become and become and become. There's no limit to my evolution or to anyone's, right? And I think that we can get caught up in, oh, this is too big. Oh, this, what, and not even like, what are they going to say? But what am I going to say about myself, right? And Reiki has really allowed me to step into my expansion and step into discomfort. I think whether it's, anxiety or depression or any other situation that brings us discomfort, I don't think I'm alone when I say our instinct is to kind of shy away. And Reiki really helps me to kind of like you were saying, but in a different way, to kind of to anchor myself so that I can stay in the discomfort. Even if it's like doing an interview, like, okay, I'm on the spot, right? But it's for a reason and for a purpose, and really ultimately for me to shine so that other people can allow themselves to shine too. Reiki, just continues to invite me.
Yeah. Sheena, it's amazing. Two things that you say that really stand out to me in all of that, your experience and relationship to it. Number one is the awareness. I don't think a lot of us come into this expecting or even realizing how aware we become of ourselves, what we hold. And like you say, even having this vulnerability emerge to where we feel suddenly safe enough to examine parts that we have run away from or may have suppressed, and all the beautiful layers of the expression. But the expansiveness that you speak about too, I mean, it's huge. And it's one of the greatest gifts, I think, of this work. And one of those things I always tell people, stay in your practice, because you can't even fully articulate the expression, right? But giving yourself the experience and seeing what is revealed. So I have to ask you this now, because I know that you're going to discuss with us today about how Reiki really does, it can point us towards our life purpose. And this is a huge topic for people. What is my purpose? When we start opening up, I want to feel purposeful, like all of this starts to mirror. So how did Reiki start opening you up to that? Or what did you start to realize in terms of your life and feeling some sense of purpose?
Absolutely. Reiki, particularly connected to my purpose, has taken things out of my way, out of my path that have, because the path is always there, we know, right? And for me, I think the majority of us, there are things, whether they're placed on our path or we place them on our path ultimately, right? And it's up to us to navigate the obstacles. And sometimes the obstacles are innate, like they are internal and they show up externally, right? And then I think the majority of the time, that's, if not 90%, 100% of the time, that's how it, is presented. And Reiki is something to me that always helps to almost like, oh, there's this thing down on the path. We're gonna move that to the side. It's almost like having roadblocks. And to me, Reiki almost always redirects you back to, even if you're taking a detour, oh no, we're gonna bring you back. And to me, your purpose is kind of going back to this idea of discomfort, is connected to this discomfort. And it's always connected to your life experience. Your purpose is connected to your lived experience, right? And oftentimes there are things, difficulties, challenges, things that I don't really want to talk about it. Let's talk about like the sunshiny thing, right? Not the thing that brought me to the sunshiny thing. But I oftentimes feel like, if not all the time, that our purpose is connected to a challenging situation that we've had, something that we've had to resolve or come to a solution on our own, and then being able to share that. and it's different. And because it's, you know, based on your lived experience, your life purpose is connected to you in a unique way, right? For me, it is very much connected to my ancestral experience, and of course my trauma, which are also intergenerational. And so being able to own that is a lot of the journey, so that I can own it in a way that's very powerful for me and empowering, so that I can share that with other folks. And what I like to say, particularly not just with Reiki, but as a whole of Reiki's made me realize, is that my ability around my gifts is turning my trauma into treasure. Wow. And alchemizing challenging situations. And Reiki is just one tool that has helped me in a massive way to realize my ability to do that. Whether that's creating a space like I have, or working with folks one-on-one or in groups. And so to me, Reiki, one, helps to remove things in your path, but it also helps you to move you further along and to help you keep up with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So we oftentimes will think of like, oh, I want to be an artist, or I want to be able to travel here and there. And then when opportunities come, we can sometimes like push it away. Oh, I'm not ready, or let me sabotage this, not intentionally, right?
Right.
But Reiki can help you to keep up with yourself, so that you can continue to step into your life purpose and opportunities that find you in the most amazing and unique ways.
Yeah, I love that you said turning your trauma into your treasure. When you're talking, it reminds me of a phrase that's commonly used here, I think maybe in Baptist churches, but it's turning your test into your testimony. Mm-hmm. And the beauty in that, in what you share, is I think a lot of times there's so much shame around whatever we've gone through, what our traumas may have been, shame around being a part of the experience, or, you know, that we allowed it to or our response, or the way we did it, so many layers, right? But to just have that shift in perspective of what has this taught me, and how is this a gift, and like the wisdom I now have, and how can I then pay that forward, and how has this refined me? And yeah, it's so interesting how no matter what we're presented with, our understanding of it and the way we personally perceive it makes all the difference with if it is, you know, something we feel debilitated by, or something we really feel empowered by. It's amazing. All the things you're sharing is just like light bulbs going off all over the place. So I want to ask you about this too, because as you started coming deeper into relationship with you, and you recognize like all of this beauty in your self-work, and now you feel inspired to create your business and share, which we're going to go more into, how can you help people recognize like what that experience was like? Because you had to be brave enough to follow the inspirations and the opportunities that came before you. Because just like you mentioned, a lot of times we're like, no, I'm not ready. I don't want to, you know, whatever it may
not
be.
For me. What?
Yeah, not for me. So what inspired you, or what even helped you to go, okay, as I'm opening up, I'm going to trust this. I'm going to try this. How can people learn to commit to what it is that they're feeling or feeling led by?
Yeah, that's such a great question. What I oftentimes say is follow the inspiration, you know, follow the light. And in the sense of sometimes it can be the smallest, it especially, you know, for someone that manages mental health stuff and all that, sometimes it's just a little light, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go that way. It's something that will, and to me, it's oftentimes noticing what seems maybe a little bit imperceptible, but it's just a little shift of, I'm interested. Oh, that got me, that brought me up a little bit. Or, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, I don't feel like getting out of bed today. And then something shifts and it's like, I can do everything in 3 hours. Let me just capitalize on that. And a lot of it is being able to capitalize on the shifts in movement, because particularly now, with folks, and whether, I had a session with someone today and they're dealing with effects of long COVID.
Mm.
And, being able to access or capitalize, I guess is the best word, on pockets of energy, right? Because sometimes it's not always available.
Right.
And so being able to follow, like, what I oftentimes think of as like a slide, and if you're at the top of the slide, are you like holding on? Like you don't want to go down the slide, but, or are you kind of putting your hands up in the air and like allowing yourself to go with the flow or wherever you're being guided and directed? If you are allowing yourself, then you will feel inspired within yourself, right? If you feel a little, and sometimes it's a little bit, I don't know if it's anxiety producing, but a little bit exciting, I forget the author of this quote, but there is this idea that, anxiety is excitement without breath, right? And so if you can, and even if it's not breath, but manage, control or direct your energy, which Reiki helps us to do, then really being able to, again, make use of that and follow the breadcrumbs, as you were saying before we started, following the breadcrumbs, of the little inspirations, and the breadcrumbs become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it becomes really a matter of trust. I mean, it always has been a matter of trust, but there's a point in time where the trust becomes very visceral. It's almost like, okay, I hear you. Okay, we're going to go this way. Where, you're communicating with your spirit team or whomever, your ancestors, and it feels so real, and almost the ability to do ourselves a disservice by not following is that much clearer by the little tiny steps that we make and little commitments. And sometimes I will still, doubt, there's doubt, or, oh, I should have done that, but oftentimes what I notice now is that the opportunity will come back around.
Right.
But being able to follow that inspiration or that spark, even if it's something that feels like flippant or silly, I think is oftentimes the best way to go,
Yes. It's funny you say the opportunity often comes back around, like with you and Reiki, like you had this connection with it, took some time, and then it came right back around. Listening to you describe that too, it reminds me of when I was younger. I used to love swimming, but I always had a problem with the initial getting into the pool because it was too cold. So I'd have to convince myself to just cannonball in. Right. And then once I just submerge myself in the water, then of course you're fine. You acclimate and you realize like, okay, I can do this. That's what you remind me of. But speaking of this too, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. It's not always linear, and there will be some bumps in the road and there will be some questioning. There'll be moments of doubt, but it really is just how we keep showing up in relationship to it all. And I think circling back to what you shared in the beginning, staying in our practice so that we can continuously be led in that lens of clarity. But so now this leads us to a big portion of your work. You created One People Toronto. And so could you please share with everyone what that is and how it really has fed into your life purpose?
Absolutely. Do you mind if I just turn on the light? It's getting a little dark here. Wonderful. It's about to rain, I think, soon. Okay. So, One People. Oh. So as I talked a little bit earlier about transforming trauma into treasure, right? I am a firm believer that any situation that we have, if we can alchemize it in some way, it can bring healing, obviously not just for ourselves, but for other folks.
Right.
And the idea of One People, actually, I've had for about 10 years or so, but it was something similar. You know, we think, oh, I'll do that in 10 years or when I'm 50, you know? Yes. And because of experiences, again, that I had had, and I was like, I want to have a space where I feel completely welcomed and celebrated, you know, not tolerated,
Right.
Particularly around spirituality. And so it was probably around 2018, I ended up going through what I like to say a relationship disintegration. I, you know, was in a relationship and that ended. And it was really, I think, something, particularly at the time, the intersection of time that it was for me. I, you know, really felt like I had to start over again, you know, in a deep, deep way. And something that I think I had always been longing for and was really cultivating at that time was a space, you know, to be able to do the work that I was doing. So at that time, you know, really doing a lot of this, I continue to do, but a lot of astrology, Reiki, of course, tarot, and really like group events. And really having at times, like, you know, a hard time trying to find communities, or even just I would rent spaces, right? That would welcome me in, and I would have my own community, and I would be like, but I wanted, like, you know, and they'll be like, kind of like, no, thank you. But then a couple months later, I'd be like, but you're doing what I asked if I could do, and, you know, and so it was 2008, 2009 that I started to look for a business space, kind of thinking like, okay, maybe it's time that I start to, you know, create my own space and container. And it was really through this relationship ending that really encouraged me to say, like, Sheena, you could try and look into it, you know, make it possible, make it a thing. And then, so it was in 2018, I found a space. It didn't work out. 2019, 2019, I ended up going away to Costa Rica and having a medicine experience, and then came back really revived and feeling like, no, I can do this. This is the time. And I didn't really know why it was the time. Just felt like, I don't know, I felt really, very, very guided. And then 2020 happened, and it made me just so much more aware in a profoundly humbling experience of why I was guided to open this space. So obviously we know 2020 brought our focus not only to COVID, but to disparities, racial disparities across the world, right? And for me, a lot of the reason around One People was a space for folks, Black folks, folks of color, Indigenous folks, to be able to have a space where they could grieve, you know? And ultimately, when we talk about grieving, we oftentimes think of like, okay, well, we're going to go to church, but sometimes church, depending on what that experience has been in the past or what it looks like now, or the, you know, the congregation, all of that, it can sometimes not be the right experience or the right environment. It really depends. My experience growing up was wonderful up until a point where I felt like I wasn't being represented or acknowledged. And so I went outside to find that. And now fast forward, I've really created a community where folks can come and really be celebrated and invited, and really given an opportunity to be their best or their worst selves, but to come as they are ultimately, and to receive healing, you know? I think 2020 has made it very clear that it doesn't matter really what our background is, we all need healing, you know? And so I think what's important though, is that having One People be a Black-led, queer positive space really puts the, kind of turns the, you know, the disparity on its head in a way, to be able to teach and learn from folks that look like me, but also including and inviting folks from all communities to learn, from folks that they may not have had the opportunity or may not have even realized that, like, oh, I didn't even think that I haven't been accessing these other people because this is all I know, and not making anyone feel bad about it, but at least, allowing folks to honor their own responsibility to themselves, but to everyone else too. Something that my sister says is that it's everybody's responsibility to be responsible.
I love that.
And in this way, this is my responsibility, and inviting other people to show and, to maybe demonstrate in their own way what it means to decolonize their wellness, right? Hence, bringing their healing back to their own hands,
No, absolutely. I completely, again, with everything you're sharing, I'm just like, gosh, we could talk for hours, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that truly has been, so much was emphasized. And I think a lot of us in these last couple of years have been pushed deeply into uncomfortable spaces, or finally addressing so much of what has been avoided or uncomfortable, and kind of just going back to what you were talking about at the beginning, right? But there's this beautiful witnessing that starts to happen of ourselves. And if we are, fortunate enough, by extension, within communities, and that's where, the learning and the healing really has to happen. And so listening to you, I'm thinking like, wow, I wish I was closer, or maybe just one day I'll come up there and come visit this beautiful space you're providing, because I think that is something that people are also finally starting to recognize, the need for spaces where people feel welcome, and having consideration around that, and not just assuming that people feel welcome in your space because your doors are open, but having more conversation around what makes people feel at home, and what helps people feel seen and heard and recognized in very respectful ways, where we can all learn from each other. Oh, Sheena, we could go like a whole nother conversation. But the thing too, like coming back to the ways that this has guided you into your purpose, and how exciting, like, that you're doing what you're doing. It's amazing how these internal shifts that you spoke of earlier, how they really do start to shape and craft external changes. And you start to recognize different opportunities and inspirations that are pushing you into things you may have never, when you're working at that corporate job, I'm sure you would have never imagined this is what you'd be doing, or
Never.
right. And then you said this relationship, the ending is what inspired you to go, right?
Yeah.
So again, kind of, pointing right back to what you said too, some of the toughest experiences are leading us and making room for us to realize what will make us feel more of service and our purpose. So I just want to say, this conversation with you has been very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I can't wait to learn more about this beautiful space that you've created, and really, really, truly. So I wanted to just ask you, just to make it clear and in your own words, with what you have been building in the space that you've been creating, why? Like, why was this so important to you to do this?
Thank you. Really, I think for a few reasons. I grew up in an environment, so I have a privileged upbringing. And even as I say that, that doesn't discount challenging experiences that I had when I was growing up, right? And at the same time, I've always been very aware. I've always had a spiritual awareness that has been gifted to me.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to harness that, like really not seeing it as blasphemous because I grew up in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so allowing myself to be a representation of God,
Mm-hmm.
right? And taking that seriously, but in a humble way. And so it was around the age of 16 that I identify as queer. I'm a queer woman, and I'm a Black woman. And I grew up in an environment that, in a town that at the time was like 25,000 people and maybe 5 Black families. Mm-hmm. And so I was, the only person other than me and my sister. Maybe there was one other Black kid. Maybe there was one brown kid out of like 600 people, and going forward. Right. And then, of course, being taught that church, if you're having trouble, church is the place where you go if you're in need emotionally, spiritually. And I felt like I wanted to go to church and feel held and loved, and I didn't feel comfortable there. And that's not, it's again, different era, different time, different experience. The community that I grew up in has evolved to over 100,000 now. In the 80s, 90s, even early thousands, it was a different experience. And it's interesting because it was around that time that I actually was really investing myself into astrology. Reiki hadn't come around yet then for me, but I got my first deck of tarot cards. It was then that I really started to kind of commune with myself, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. Spirit was guiding me, and it was like, okay, you don't feel comfortable here, but we're going to find a space where you feel comfortable, but we're going to start with you feeling comfortable within yourself. Right. And to be honest, a lot of everything that and it's not to say that my parents and my family haven't been supportive to a point that they can understand, but if they haven't been through it, or if folks haven't been through something, then it's hard for them to understand and guide you. And so a lot of my journey around self-harm, around medication, around talk therapy, between the ages of like 12 until 30 even, it was all me. Not to say that I didn't have the support of my mom or like that sort of stuff, but it was all me. And I'd really love to be able to have a space, well, now that I do, but to encourage folks where they don't it doesn't have to be just them. It doesn't have to be them kind of in the trenches by themselves, figuring it out. And then, of course, Reiki happened, and it was like, whoosh. So being able to add Reiki to everything that, I already do, is just a blessing. I always say, particularly when I'm teaching with folks, Reiki it just amplifies everything, and your natural gifts, of course. And so being able to have a space that to me is non-denominational, but is still very spiritual, cultural, healing related. And one also too represents the diaspora, the African diaspora, and the way in which that we use community healing, to bring wellness to other folks, but to ourselves as well. And to remind us, Black folks, but community, of what it means to support each other, because we oftentimes know that we're not hurt by ourselves. We're not taught to hurt ourselves. We're taught to hurt ourselves by an experience that we've had with someone externally. And so eventually, once you get strong enough, or, your wherewithal up, after having done work on your own or in solitary, that you can come back into community and heal in that way. And that's why it's something that I've been longing for, and I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Sheena, this is all so beautiful. I really, truly, and the reason it's like personally, so many things of what you said have resonated on a very personal level, but just the beauty, I think, that you've really shared and touched on of the ways that Reiki helps us to, again, not just come into deep relationship with ourselves, but how profound it is, the depth of healing when we really direct it inwards. Because, a lot of us, we may not know that this is even a possibility, or maybe stuck in a particular part of the practice and not even realize the way that this work is refining you and helping you to gain strength and clarity and courage and all of the subtle nuances that I think, I don't know, maybe people don't think to look for. Like they think this work is something separate
Yes.
from who they're becoming, right? And so much of what you shared have really highlighted how it's refined and help you realize and recognize just the beauty of who you are and the work that you came to share. So hopefully, I'm sure so much of what you shared will resonate with people, and now they'll start to pay attention to the ways that Reiki really is illuminating for them what may be their life purpose and helping them feel just more in love with themselves.
Absolutely. If I could just on just to that point, I work with a lot of creatives and musicians and artists, and oftentimes, even just like as a teacher, so them wanting to be able to, or seeing, even if they don't necessarily understand it in the moment, wanting to do a training because it will help them, whether it's being on stage, putting out a new piece, that sort of stuff, and being able to actually like release it without holding on, because a lot of for creatives is doing the work, but then also being able to let it go, right? And feeling confident enough to be able to say, okay, I'm done with that. I'm going to release that, and it's good enough.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And again, all of those little pieces, I don't even think we realize all the ways that we may be holding ourselves back, or where the fear resides or the control resides. And then we start doing the work and it becomes so apparent. So I want to make sure too, everyone who's listening knows, because if we sign up for your newsletter, we can get updates about all of the work that you're doing, retreats that you hold, events that you hold.
Yes.
So we can sign up for the newsletter at SheenaDennise.com/registration.
That's right.
But just for everyone, the links will be right beneath this interview. You can click on everything to get to know Sheena below. I do want to thank you again so much. And just want to check in before we go. Do you have any last thoughts or something that you want to share with everyone as it relates to recognizing your own purpose?
If it feels scary in relation to something that you haven't been doing or something that you want to do, Reiki will help to open that up, right? And I think if it's a session, or whether it's with me or your lender or anyone that's in your environment, in your locale, it's important that you kind of keep making those steps forward, even if it's just the smallest baby steps. Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's like, oh, I saw this little sign and it's going to direct me to that. But especially now, it's continuing to take care of yourself in the way that is you need. And that's different for everyone, right? But Reiki will, for me, and I think for everyone, can help to transform your past, your present, and your future, but also to exactly what it is that you're supposed to be doing here.
That is beautifully said. And I know that we can't really talk with each other about this all day, but really appreciate all that you shared, Sheena. And I want to say thank you to everyone who is watching now, tuning in. Don't forget to click on the links below, learn more about Sheena and her work. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for joining our 7th edition of the Reiki Healing Summit, brought to you by Reiki Rays. To learn more, visit reikirays.com/summit 2022. To find out more about our global community and the wide variety of Reiki articles and infographics, free guided meditations, free ebooks or podcasts, online courses, and global summits, visit reikirays.com. Thank you again for joining us and sharing this event with those who can also benefit from the healing and soul empowerment it brings. Reiki blessings.